Genesis chapter 4, verse 10. In the prior verse, we saw that God had asked Cain where his brother could be found, and Cain dodges the question by asking God, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Now we're going to see God's response to Cain. Ke epen ho theos, te epoiesas, phone haimatas tu adelphu su, boa pros me ek tes ges. We'll begin with this first line, which starts with apen, or after the kai, so and. Apen, third singular from Lego, and the subject here is hotheos, so God is now responding. So, and God said, implied to Cain. And then the verb here is epoiesas, and you can see with that sigma and as ending and the e on the front end, this is going to be a second singular aorist active indicative from poieo. So you did, or notice it's a question mark, what did you do? And I've already supplied that te there. This is going to be the accusative singular neuter. Notice it's the interrogative tis. So what have you done, or what did you do? And then he goes on to say phone, a sound, or the voice, if you will, of haimatas, of blood, and with that os ending, this is going to be a genitive singular neuter. That's third declension. So the voice or sound of blood, but it's the blood of your brother, which is now, the third or fourth time we've seen the repetition of this reminder that Abel is the brother of Cain. So the sound of the blood of your brother. And then the verb here is boa, which is from boao. This is to cry, or perhaps to cry out. Notice it's an alpha contract. So what's going on here? You have the alpha at the end of the verb plus a ei ending. Contracts to alpha with the iota subscript and a circumflex there. So there's going to be a third singular present active indicative. Cries out, and that makes sense. The subject here is phone. So the voice or the sound cries out, pros me, to me. And then we have ek tes ges, from the earth, where the blood has been spilt. And so that is the first thing here that God says. Very tragic reminder of the murder of Abel by Cain. Now, this blood of Abel is referenced 3 times in the New Testament. So let's take a look at those. The first one is a parallel passage that is found in both Matthew 23:35 as well as Luke 11:51, where Jesus basically says the blood of righteous Abel, as we see, so a reminder of this blood here of Abel, all the way up from him up to this prophet Zechariah, son of Berechiah, according to Matthew. That's not the same prophet as the one who is the prophet who wrote the book. Attributed to him in the Old Testament. It's a different prophet who was killed in the temple. The blood from those 2 bookends, if you will, the first martyr Abel, the last one recorded in the Old Testament, will be pressed upon, will be held accountable, or the current Israelite leadership will be held accountable for that blood. And in fact, there's a further typology that basically Jesus is going to be yet another righteous person whose blood will be spilled, and they will be held accountable for his death as well. So it's very interesting that Jesus goes back to Genesis to say, okay, this is the first person who was righteous but killed despite that. And, there's a whole array of Old Testament prophets and other figures who have been killed by ancient Israel in their rejection of God and his emissaries, and that will ultimately lead to Jesus. Those are the first 2 times we see the blood of Abel referenced. Then we fast forward to Hebrews, and in 12:24 we have another very interesting way that the blood is referenced, and it's also playing on, in a certain sense, this typology with respect to Jesus. So the author says, we have come to, and that's kind of earlier, Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and Hebrews, of course, talks about that at great length, and to the sprinkled blood, that is the blood of Jesus at least, that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. So the blood of Abel is, again, going back to that haima there. But notice that Hebrews is picking up on one important detail, that it's a word of the blood of Abel that is speaking. So he's clearly reading closely that this is the voice of this blood that has cried out to God. But now the blood of Jesus is even better in the sense of, though it was tragic, of course, that he died, that enables him to become the mediator of a new and better covenant. So it's very fascinating that because Hebrews is tapping into the Old Testament all the time, that he goes back even to Genesis 4 to draw this connection from Abel to the blood of Jesus. So fascinating and really, hopefully, devotionally satisfying stuff here in Genesis 4:10, despite the fact that it's quite tragic in its original context. There's a typological connection to Jesus in the end. So thanks for tuning in.